2025, Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness encourages entrepreneurs to take advantage of country's economic climate. President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Marva MacDonald Bishop, defends the use of non-custodial sentences over prison time. Minister of Labour and Social Security, Pernell Charles Jr., says the government will be raising the standards for digital inclusion for persons with disabilities. On the international scene, huge rally in Tel Aviv as Israelis praise Trump for securing ceasefire and hostage deal. And in sport, Reggae Boys beaten by Curaçao in CONCACAF World Cup qualifiers. The details after this.
If it's news, it's got to be Nationwide 90 FM.
Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness is encouraging entrepreneurs to take advantage of Jamaica's economic climate by investing in the country so that there can be wealth creation. Dr. Holness was speaking at a groundbreaking site for a planned Boot 2 commercial complex at Marmy Bay, St. Ann on Friday.
Who understand that the environment in which the government has created economic certainty, a proper regulatory environment where they can get access to credit, that they must take advantage of this environment and not necessarily sit by and wait for development to happen to them, that they must take their capital, they must take risks, they must be entrepreneurial, they must be prospecting, they must find the opportunity, and they must create wealth.
Dr. Holness also said a new investment class is emerging in Jamaica. He said Alexia Booth, CEO of Boot, and her father, Wayne Booth, are among a new group of persons who are driving wealth expansion in Jamaica.
There are many, I would like to term them, new investors emerging, a new class of entrepreneurs emerging in the country, who are driving the growth of the country, who see themselves as part of the vanguard of development. And I see Mr. Booth as a leader in that new class of investors in Jamaica.
Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness. The JDF Coast Guard rescued 16 fishermen from a burning vessel on Friday. The crew of the burning vessel comprised 9 Dominicans and 8 Jamaicans. The JDF says the burning vessel was spotted just before midday about 14 miles south of Portland Point. It says the Coast Guard responded and extinguished the fire. The JDF says while simultaneously fighting the fire, the Guard also launched a small boat to search the area for survivors. The 16 fishermen were discovered adrift in 3 small canoes. They were rescued and taken to the mainland for further medical attention. 1 crew member reportedly drowned. The 17-member crew had departed from Harborview for the Pedro Banks. The JDF is urging the public and mariners on the south coast to remain vigilant for any signs of the missing person and report any sightings immediately to the JRCC. Members of the public are also being encouraged to contact the Joint Rescue Coordination Center, JRCC, in Kingston in the event of any search and rescue case. The JRCC Kingston is a 24-hour maritime and aeronautical search and rescue center that can be contacted via telephone at 876-976-8193 or 876-836-1216. And the Maritime Police and the JDF Coast Guard are searching for a Hanover fisherman who's been missing for a week. Granville Reed departed Lances Bay in Lucy on Friday, October 3, for an offshore area known locally as Dolphins Bank, which is approximately 2.5 miles northwest of Lances Bay. Reed was supposed to return to Lances Bay later that Friday afternoon, but he failed to return. The Joint Rescue Coordination Center was notified about the overdue vessel and missing fishermen. The JDF's Maritime Air and Cyber Command, MACC, the JCF, and members of the local fishing community have since carried out numerous searches for Mr. Reed, but these have proven futile. MACC says they will continue to broadcast a search and rescue case to mariners, encouraging them to be vigilant and report any sign of Mr. Reed immediately. Members of the public are encouraged to contact the Joint Rescue Coordination Center in Kingston in the event of any search and rescue case. blamed the law, not the judge. President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Marva MacDonald Bishop, is defending the use of non-custodial sentences over prison time despite the outcry from the public for harsher penalties. Justice MacDonald Bishop says the law, as set down by Parliament, gives reserved jail time for only the most serious crimes. The Court of Appeal President made the statement as she delivered the keynote lecture at Thursday's Mona Law Distinguished Lecture Series. Siobhan Campbell tells us more.
Court of Appeal President Justice Marva MacDonald Bishop says judges often face the contentious use of custodial versus non-custodial sentences. She was responding to the growing calls for harsher penalties for criminal offenders.
Imprisonment is the backbone of most criminal justice systems, and there are typically strong public expectation for sentences of imprisonment in all cases, even where the law does not permit it. You see what came out in that little skit, where it was a parking ticket and the man was sentenced to hang on top of the fine. The first dilemma for a sentencing judge often arises in deciding whether to deprive an offender of his liberty by imposing a sentence of imprisonment, or whether the court should impose a non-custodial sentence like a fine, community service, or curfew.
Justice MacDonald Bishop says judges are often seen as soft when the sentences they impose do not meet expectations.
Determining whether imprisonment is warranted can therefore be contentious and lead to differences of opinion among judges themselves and among judges on the one hand and the public, and not to mention the other branches of government on the other. In many cases where non-custodial offenses are imposed non-custodial sentences are imposed, judges are often seen as taken too soft or lenient an approach.
Justice MacDonald Bishop admits that the public outcry can be considerable, but she believes the ire is incorrectly directed at judges. According to her, the law, namely the Criminal Justice Reform Act of 1978, is at fault.
Judges are duty-bound by statute to first have regard to non-custodial sentence options where those are available, having regard not only to the circumstances of the offense, but also the circumstances of the offender. The Criminal Justice Reform Act imposes a statutory mandate that in all cases where a non-custodial sentence is permitted as an option, it should be the court's first consideration. Imprisonment, therefore, should be reserved as a last resort and for the most serious of offenses.
The Court of Appeal President says the ambiguity of the legislation further complicates the job of the judiciary.
The language of the Criminal Justice Reform Act, however, still puts judges in the difficult position of deciding what to do in each individual case. In other words, judges continue to face the dilemma of determining which cases are the most serious or last resort. In fact, there's the case on the Privy Council with the death penalty, which is outside the scope of this paper. But they put in the judgment that you have to make sure this case is the worst of the worst. So in determining what is the worst of the worst, it's a serious problem for judges, because the legislation offers no clarification on what that means or what judges should consider.
Siobhan Campbell for Nationwide News.
Minister of Labour and Social Security Pernell Charles Jr. says the government will be raising the standards for digital inclusion for persons with disabilities as part of its commitment to equity and empowerment.
We are looking on partnering with the telecom providers to integrate accessibility into the product design and the customer service. We're looking on partnering again around the national relay and sign language to introduce those things into our emergency services, to make sure that we have the right captioning and sign language interpretation being available for public broadcasts, newscasts, government streams, things that very often other persons take for granted. We're talking about partnership with AdSpen and emergency alerts to make sure that you have multimodal options, including text, audio, and visual. Again, things that persons take for granted, but persons with disabilities understand the importance of.
On Thursday, Minister Charles Jr. announced that the ministry will be expanding training in assistive technology to equip more persons with disabilities to navigate and benefit from the digital space. He noted that the initiative forms part of the ministry's key priorities for the next 12 to 24 months. Describing the move as an investment in the empowerment and enabling of Jamaicans regardless of ability, the minister urged private sector companies to also get on board.
All business, all educators, communities, organizations, NGOs, persons thinking about starting up business, join us in this mission so that when we design for accessibility, we design for everyone, and we help to build a stronger, more resilient Jamaica. This is not just talk. This is something that has been proven across the world to be a significant element that contributes to the GDP. When you can find a way and the mechanisms for persons with disabilities to have the barriers removed, they are among the most significant contributors. It's not about a charity. It's about removing the barriers so the persons with disabilities who wish to contribute are empowered to do so.
Pernell Charles Jr., Minister of Labour and Social Security. He was speaking during Nationwide at 5 on Thursday. On the international scene, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff tells a rally in Tel Aviv that the U.S. President Donald Trump is owed deep gratitude as Israel awaits the release of hostages. There has been a sense of hope and excitement as the 72-hour deadline for the hostages to be returned to Israel nears, writes Alice Cuddy from Tel Aviv. Trump and 20 other leaders will meet at a summit on the Gaza war in Egypt on Monday, the Egyptian president confirms. Elsewhere, Hamas recalls 7,000 fighters to reassert control over Gaza as fears of renewed internal violence emerge. There is a high risk of internal fighting, something Palestinians have experienced before, writes the Gaza correspondent for the BBC. Gaza's Hamas-run civil defense agency says it's digging through rubble to locate the bodies of missing Palestinians. It says 9,500 remain unaccounted for. Hamas has until 12 local time on Monday to release hostages as Israel. Well, they are expected to release 1,700 detainees from Gaza and about 250 Palestinian prisoners. And now to sport. In the clash between Curacao and Jamaica, the Wave Blues claimed an important 2-0 victory over the World Cup qualifiers in the first half. Livano Comencia opened the scoring with a beautiful goal after a well-crafted team move. In the second half, Kenji Gore, he doubled the lead, securing the win for the home side. Jamaica did manage to score through Richard King, but the goal was disallowed after a VAR review. And now for a recap of the top stories making the news at this hour. Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness encourages entrepreneurs to take advantage of the country's economic climate. President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Marvin McDonald Bishop, defends the use of non-costular sentences over prison time. Minister of Labour and Social Security Pernell Charles Jr. says the government will be raising the standards for digital inclusion for persons with disabilities. You can find the news on our website at nationwideradiojm.com and on the Nationwide app available on Google Play and the App Store. News is next at 5 tomorrow afternoon. Good afternoon.